We followed the fate of 50 rats of 2 different strains, Worcester and Lister hooded, born and raised in the laboratory, but who, when released in a large outdoor enclosure, would have to compete, like their wild cousins, for shelter, food and mates. Predictably, they are immediately curious, but cautious too. It is, after all, the first time they've seen the sky. But it doesn't take too long before the drive to explore, which has made their wild cousins so successful, takes the better of them, with males venturing out first. The rats from the hooded strain are more exploratory, ready to venture into the unknown quicker. And they take a welcome opportunity to visit the white females in the other boxes. The rats then check out available shelter, a sensible precaution for a prey. It's a good first sign that these lab rats still have some instinct for survival. But equally, rats have a keen desire to explore, and everything is so new. Even climbing is new, as laboratory rats are traditionally housed in a 2-dimensional world, and they investigate the ladder with hesitancy. It didn't take them long to find water, and readily took to it. Rats require a great deal of water, and they often stop for a drink between bites if they can. Some soon developed distinctive ways of drinking. This rat always preferred to drink from her paws, or even from a leaf. Perhaps it was a strategy to remain upright and vigilant. It's not long before the rats are introduced to yet another new experience, for which they were perhaps less well prepared: a summer storm. It was a relief to see that most rats were sensible enough to sit it out under cover. It's only been a few hours, but the rats have already adopted a hopping gait characteristic of wild rats. And they begin to dig, something that the lab rats haven't been able to do, but they've not forgotten how. The rats' first day of freedom for 200 generations has been successful. But now we must leave them alone to spend their first night in their new home. A new day brings new challenges. They're faced with foods that they've never encountered before, a buffet quite different from the homogenized pellets that they've been raised on. Some foods are immediately tempting. Others, a little puzzling. Rats are omnivores, and their willingness to test a wide range of foods has contributed to their success. New foods are the key to new situations and environments, but this leads to a problem. Not everything that looks like food is edible, and some are potentially lethal. Rats show typically a conflict of motivation, keen to test new foodstuffs, but cautious. This is the Omnivores Paradox, a dilemma that rats share with humans. Wild rats have evolved a range of solutions to the Omnivores Paradox. Would lab rats still use them? Being social is one such solution. By checking what other rats do, members of the colony can learn from each other. This hooded rat has already discovered the rewards of blackberries. Very soon, her breath and coat are impregnated with this new smell. Other rats are sensitive to this and follow this hooded pioneer. This white rat learns quickly that it may be worth a try, even though he has yet to discover that ripe blackberries are best. But how can it tell that a particular food might be bad? Like humans, rats have evolved the capacity to make a connection between the taste and smell of what they eat and how they feel later, sometimes hours later. The ability to learn despite this time delay was a surprise when it was discovered. How do you know what has hurt you if the pain occurs several hours later? Yet research has shown that natural selection has shaped their brains so that these important connections are made when food is concerned. This is an important part of the omnivore's armory, an ability that has also been found in humans. And being social helps once again, as rats can learn from the experience of other individuals, a phenomenon called the poison partner effect. If a rat smelling of a particular foodstuff is looking unwell, other individuals will avoid that food in the future. Eating isn't the only problem. Avoiding being eaten is another danger that small creatures face. The visit of an unwelcome guest sends the colony bolting into their burrows. But rats don't need to see a cat to appreciate the danger. They've evolved an innate aversion to cat odours. It makes good sense to stay away from areas visited by such formidable predators. And despite generations that have never encountered a cat, these rats still show this innate aversion. Not all the rats witnessed this cat's visit, yet our whole colony stopped venturing out to take food for the rest of the day, preferring instead to rely on stored foods until they judged that the danger had passed. One way that mammals avoid predation is to come out at night. Rats are naturally nocturnal, and as the weeks progress, the colony is becoming increasingly active after sunset. And that's not the only change that we see in our rats. Where once they were hesitant, they've become very agile. And where they ambled through the open spaces, they now check that there is no sign of danger before moving rapidly between sheltered points. They've built a comfortable and complex series of burrows and corridors. The preferred spot is the straw bales, the rats' equivalent of luxury apartments. Some females are provisioning these new homes with hoarded food. These laboratory rats have never lacked food, but here their wild instincts dictate that they lay in provisions. There may soon be more mouths to feed. Lab rats have been bred to be docile, but there were signs that a pecking order was emerging. The larger rat is usually the winner of such aggressive interactions. Thereafter, the subordinate will simply give way to its superior. Such a pecking order can be remarkably stable, with individuals remaining dominant over rats they've beaten in the past long after they've outgrown them. The subordinate may accept the status quo because there's more to be gained by accepting a subordinate status than risking an all-out conflict. Aggressive escalation amongst rats is rare. Smell and touch are not the only senses that rats use, and the colony is echoing with sounds that we can't hear. Rats can communicate in the ultrasonic range, above the 20 kHz upper limit of our hearing. Whilst the function of these vocalizations are mostly unknown, most are produced socially. Rats have 3 kinds of calls in at least 2 different ultrasonic frequencies. This long 22 kHz call, whose frequency has been lowered to make it audible, can be emitted by subordinates and may express fear or even pain. At other times, it may be used as a warning or an alarm call. It's also emitted by females prior to mating and by males after ejaculation. 2 other types of calls operate at even higher ultrasonic frequencies, in the 50 to 100 kHz range. This call is heard in a mating context, often when males follow females. In some cases, it seems to make the females more likely to be sexually receptive. This less complex call can be heard in an aggressive context. And indeed, there were some signs of conflict developing between our rats. Resolving conflicts is part of being social, and our naive rats have formed a complex and efficient colony, which is now thriving. They've transformed their habitat too. Finding important features in the environment is now made easier by the presence of runs. Like so many arteries, those rat-made runs allow easy access to places of interest, such as food sources, burrows, or shelter. They're like motorways, conveniently the width of an adult, and the rats zoom through them at great speed. A rat can become so familiar with its pathways that it doesn't even have to look where it's going, and that's a mistake if a new obstacle has appeared in its path. Smells are also an important component of the rat's world. They're used to identify individuals, their sex, dominant status, and estrus cycle. By now, the rats have also probably tuned in to a clan smell. A wild rat visiting the colony produces great excitement. This mixture of aggression and fascination isn't only because he looks different. His smell doesn't match that of the clan. The wild rat is also attracted by the smells emanating from the colony. One smell in particular can provide a frisson of excitement like no other, at least among the males, that of a female on heat. Unless mated, female rats come into estrus every 5 days or so. Estrus lasts a few hours, and males are attentive to any development. In areas sparsely populated in the wild, males may travel over several kilometers to find females. In densely populated areas where food is abundant, like in farms or here, females are more easily available. But males have to compete, and the race to find the female is on, sometimes even before the sun has set. But the female doesn't make it easy. Moving around the colony, she invites the males to chase her and encourages competition. Soon, she has a queue following her. It's only when she stops to present her rump in lordosis that the first male in the queue can mate, whilst the others look on. A close examination reveals that her ears are vibrating. This is very sexy, at least for rats. After the male has copulated, he licks his genital area whilst the female moves on, followed by the rest of the horde. Although it is the female who ultimately decides when to mate, there's a fine line between solicitation and harassment. Even then, the other males interfere very little with the mating male, and don't fight with each other. Reduced fighting may be a feature of generations of laboratory breeding, but it's also found in wild rats. Because the female is constantly on the move, males engaged in fighting would rapidly lose her, and therefore lose the opportunity to mate. This may also be why subordinates are inclined to accept their social ranking in the colony without too much fuss. Even they might have a chance to mate in such an indiscriminate scramble for pole position. Why do such multi-male, multi-female mating patterns exist? It's clear why males benefit from mating with several females, since it will increase the number of their offspring. But why should females, since females are limited by the number of pups that they can produce? This isn't only a feature of harassment, as females, when given the choice, actively choose to mate with several males. Whilst it's still a bit of a mystery, there are several possibilities. For example, females may ensure their eggs are fertilized by reducing the chance of mating with an infertile male. It may also be a way of inducing competition between males and ensuring that only the best sperm or the fittest males most able to keep up with her win the scramble competition. Three weeks later, 10 pups are born. Litter size in lab rats is generally more than their wild cousins, but like them, the litter can be fathered by different males. Females make attentive mothers, as virtually no care is provided by the males. Pups are born blind and hairless, and will be dependent on their mother for several weeks. They are at the mercy of predators, and that includes other members of the colony. Infanticide, though not frequent, is widespread amongst mammals. Many instances of infanticide are attempts to limit competition. In some rodents, females may kill the pups of other females, but the real danger are the males, who, profiting from the female's brief absence, may kill some or all of the pups. This infanticidal male is probably not the father of this litter, as males are less likely to attack the litter of females with whom they've mated. However cruel it may seem, it makes biological sense, of course, as these pups will never compete with his offspring. Perhaps it's because of this biological equivalent of a protection racket that females accept, indeed solicit, mating with several males. In the mating frenzy, the males can't be sure that at least some of the pups are not theirs. The ruse appears to work, as this was the only incident that we observed during the filming. 3 weeks later, and the first new arrivals in the enclosure demonstrate how well the colony's doing. The appearance of the pups is testimony to the mixed matings in the colony. Within 3 weeks, the pups are able to feed by themselves, but first they have to decide what to eat. To some extent, they already have some idea. They will have learned what to expect from the taste of their mother's milk, as well as from the smells emanating from other individuals in the colony. The burrows are now acting as information centres, as the rats carry with them a wide panoply of smells from the outside world. And following along after their mother is useful too. By now, the rats have learned to exploit food in the more remote places and climb on small branches with great agility. Well, most of the time. the rat diet has also become far more varied than the food pellets that were their staple in captivity. An apple, a snail, a stray egg, even a dead bird. All were devoured by the colony. But this diversity poses a problem since foods vary in their nutrient content. How do the rats know how to select a balanced diet? They're helped by another ability evolved by their omnivorous wild ancestors. In addition to having learned whether some foods are better than others, rats possess, like humans, some specific appetites, allowing them to compensate for specific deficiencies in some proteins or salt. Despite their increased caution, they remain less fearful of novel objects than their wild counterparts, a feature called neophobia. It's been said that paranoia in wild rats is a sign of a good grasp of reality, but lab rats have become less suspicious. You wouldn't catch a wild rat so easily. The colony is now thriving, and the burrow complex has been extended. Fermentation in the straw, triggered by the ammonia from the rat's urine, is even keeping them warm. As the colony now watches the approaching winter nights from the close comfort of a centrally heated accommodation, it's clear that our laboratory rats, initially naive and hesitant when released, soon gelled into a structured and complex society. It didn't take them long, when given the opportunity, to resolve successfully many challenges in ways similar to their wild cousins. Clearly, many wild instincts remain. Understanding how much of the wild rat remains hidden is relevant when housing them.